Welcome back, everybody. My name is Trini, and I am the Batquad. This is a channel where I go through my personal DVD collection from A through Z. Now, I am a quadriplegic, so keeping with the theme of four, I choose 4 videos per episode. I review them, I rate them, and at the end, I let them battle it out to see which one I like the most. So without further ado, let's continue on with Season 8. All right. So for our first movie, it's going to be Mel Gibson's Apocalypto. Long hair on a quadriplegic is not an easy thing to live with. So, Apocalypto came out in Apocalypto came out in 2006, and interesting tidbit, this is actually the first movie that I went with my then girlfriend, now wife, Carmi, and we didn't go to the movies much, but this is one of the movies that we actually went to, and it's actually one of her favorites. So this movie takes place in the 1500s, and it actually takes place during when the Mayans were the biggest power in I guess what we would call now Mexico area. That's why I'm wearing this shirt, because I am Mexican, and I like Batman too. So perfect shirt for me. So in this movie, you follow the main character, whose name is Jaguar's Paw, and he has a family, and he's part of a small tribe that's right outside of a large Mayan city. In the beginning, you get to see how they live their lives with the way they hunt, and they eat together and live together and have families together. And he has a young son and a pregnant wife. At some point during the morning, while they're all sleeping, they get attacked by soldiers from the large Mayan city. The soldiers are led by a character named Zero Wolf, and he also has like a little second in command guy. His name's Middle Eye, and man, that dude's nasty. As soon as that guy comes on screen and you see his face, he just has his face that, oh, you just want to punch. So I mean, he was perfectly cast. I hope the actor doesn't look like that normally, but man, something about that dude's face and the way he acts, he's such a good bad guy. So anyway, these Mayan soldiers, they wind up attacking the town, and they kidnap several of the members of the tribe, leaving only the children behind. So the movie follows as these Mayan soldiers take these poor tribes people, they take them to the main city to be sacrificed, and eventually, through circumstances of a solar eclipse and people getting butchered and sacrificed, eventually the tribes people, Jaguar's Paw and his people, some of them get pardoned from being sacrificed, but then they're released back to these soldiers, and then these soldiers play this game where they're trying to kill them in this open field, and they're shooting arrows and throwing spears at them. But eventually Jaguar's Paw gets away. He gets back to where his tribe used to be, because unbeknownst to everybody, I mean, because in the beginning the pregnant wife and the son, they weren't taken, they were hidden in this cave. And Jaguar's Paw, he's trying to get back to her because this cave is slowly filling up with water, and she can't get out because it's this really deep cave, like who knows, like I don't know, 10 stories. She's stuck in this deep cave, and it's filling up with water. And I mean, this part was kind of silly, but she starts to have the baby in the cave. That part kind of stretched my believability in the situation, but I mean, for so far, which was pretty much a perfect movie, if that's the worst part of it, I mean, it's fine, but it just ups the stakes. Anyways, Jaguar Paw is trying to get back to his wife. The general and his minions are after him. The rest of the last part of the movie is all this chase through the jungle, where Jaguar's Paw, he actually uses the jungle to help him eliminate his enemies and get to his wife. I mean, this movie, it's so immersive. Mel Gibson used actual Mayan people and people that actually spoke the language. And when you're there and it's all subtitled, they only speak through the Mayan language. It's so immersive. The makeup, the costume, the way they act. I mean, you feel like you're watching like almost like a documentary, watching these people live their lives and how perilous it could be at a moment's notice. By the time you get to the end of this movie, you're so exhausted because these characters, they're constantly running and fighting and then running some more and jumping off waterfalls, and leopards, or I'm sorry, jaguars, of course, Jaguar's Paw. Jaguars are chasing people, and there's poison darts and traps. by the end of this movie, you're just exhausted. But wow, what a movie! I mean, just to get you to that point, to get you so involved in it. I mean, kudos to Mel Gibson. It was really good acting and really really truly immersive. So when it comes to scoring Apocalypto, I mean, between the acting, the costume, the sound design, the music, the characters, I mean, it's so involving and so compelling. I mean, I really couldn't give this movie any less than 4 out of 4 wheelchairs. So for our second movie, it's going to be As Good as It Gets. As Good as It Gets was released December 1997, and it stars Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Greg Kinnear. This movie was a critical darling. Both Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson won Oscars for their performances. So, what's this movie about? You have Jack Nicholson living in a high rise complex, and Greg Kinnear is his neighbor. Jack Nicholson, he's an author and he writes romance novels. And the funny thing about it, or the thing that's weird, is that nobody likes Jack Nicholson. He can't get along with anybody. Why? He's super OCD and he has this impulse issue where he just says whatever's on his mind. If he doesn't like you, or if he doesn't like pets, or he doesn't like, for example, he doesn't like Greg Kinnear, who happens to be gay, he says a lot of gay slurs towards him, and really shows how much he just dislikes the way he lives. So Greg Kinnear, on the other hand, he's an artist, and like I said, he lives next door or like right down the hall from him, and he also owns this little dog. Jack Nicholson can't stand this dog because the dog constantly goes pee or poop in the hallway, and Jack Nicholson freaks out every time he sees this dog. One of the funny things is Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Greg Kinnear's boyfriend in this movie, and he's the only one that stands up to Jack Nicholson's character. So at some point, he'll sit there and he'll threaten him, and Jack Nicholson immediately, he's one of those guys who's almost like a bully. Well, I mean, he is a bully. He's a bully in this movie, but as soon as somebody stands up to him, he shrinks back and is like, no, don't touch me, don't talk to me like that. So Cuba Gooding Jr. knows that, and he recognizes that, and he uses that to get Jack Nicholson to do what he wants him to do. So the third character in this movie, or the third main character, is played by Helen Hunt. Now, Helen Hunt, she's a waitress and a single mom, and she works at the nearby restaurant that Jack Nicholson frequents. So Jack goes in there, and he has a favorite seat because of his OCD. He needs his favorite seat. So if someone's sitting in his seat, he'll sit there and he'll wait and he'll pace and he'll grumble and gripe and do things that'll annoy the person that's sitting there until they finally get up, and then finally he'll sit down. And it's funny because all the waiters and waitresses, whenever they see Jack show up, they just can't stand being around. They run. So the only person who actually can put up with him and I guess understands his problems or whatever is the Helen Hunt character. Eventually, the Greg Kinnear character, he gets robbed and he gets seriously beat up, and he can't take care of his little dog. So Cuba Gooding Jr., he winds up taking the dog to Jack Nicholson and says, hey, you need to take care of this dog because right now, Greg Kinnear can't. You need to take care of this dog. And he forces, like, he's gonna beat him up if he doesn't take care of this dog. So reluctantly, Jack Nicholson takes on the dog and he has him for a couple days, and he starts to train him and actually starts to get feelings for this dog. So even though he hated the dog initially, his heart starts to melt a little bit for this dog, and that causes a little bit of change for Jack Nicholson because after that he becomes a little bit softer. At the same time, Helen Hunt, she, like I said, she's a single mom. Well, the kid is really sickly, and he goes to the hospital often, and he gets like a hospital runaround. Doctors are constantly prescribing him for different things. Well, like I said, Jack Nicholson, he's a successful author, and he actually has money, and he realizes that if Helen Hunt's kid is sick, she can't be at work and she can't serve him. So in order for him to get served, he winds up sending a doctor to go take care of the kid so that she can come back to work and serve him. So even though he's doing nice things, he's actually doing it for selfish reasons. But eventually it feels like not only is he melting a little bit because of the dog, but he's starting to realize that he has feelings for the Helen Hunt character as well. So ultimately, all three characters, they go on a road trip with each other. And during that road trip, they discover different things about each other. Greg Kinnear, he finds he was struggling with painting after being robbed, but he found his muse in Helen Hunt. Helen Hunt, became a little bit, because her son is better. She's more outgoing, and the Jack Nicholson character, he decides that, well, he's going to try to be better, to have a good relationship with both Helen Hunt and to be nicer to Greg Kinnear. So ultimately, I mean, this is a romantic comedy, a little bit of drama thrown in there. I thought the acting was really good. I enjoyed watching the characters. I'm not sure that Helen Hunt would necessarily fall for Jack Nicholson. So at the end, it's a little bit ambiguous on whether they continue a romantic relationship or a friendship. In my mind, I, I think Jack Nicholson definitely has a crush on her and probably wants to continue a relationship. But I couldn't see these characters, I don't know, being romantically involved after the movie. But otherwise, I mean, it's a pretty good movie about people just uh, growing and becoming better people. So ultimately, when I saw it in the movie theater, I enjoyed it. On this review that I recently rewatched it, um, I don't know, it kind of held up a little bit. I'm not really a romantic comedy kind of guy, so it's really hard for me to. It was a little bit hard for me to get into it, although I did enjoy it. I don't know that I would watch it again, and I'm not really sure why I bought the DVD, to be honest. So now looking back, yes, it was an enjoyable movie, but I think if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it. I mean, it is good, so I guess I'd give it 3 out of 4 wheelchairs. And for our next movie, it's going to be Austin Powers, the first Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. Austin Powers was released in May of 1997. The movie stars Mike Myers as the titular character of Austin Powers, and also the dual role of Doctor Evil, which is the bad guy in the movie. And this movie is basically a parody of the James Bond movies, especially James Bond in the 60s. So this movie, where it starts, it actually starts in the 60s with uh, Austin Powers being almost like a celebrity spy, and he's like this swinging guy, and chicks dig him, and he's really one of the funny parts about the movie is he's actually, I mean, he's kind of gross. He has messed up teeth, and he has goofy glasses, and his hair's all funky, nasty, shaggy chest hair, and he just says goofy stuff. He is with his like, yeah, baby, yeah, and shall we shag now or shag later, and all these goofy sayings, and the chicks just fall for it, and that's part of the comedy of the movie. So much like a Bond movie, it seems like another adventure was already happening off screen. So this movie starts off, and it seems like it's the end where Mike Myers, or Austin Powers, catches Doctor Evil, but he escapes. And what they do is Austin Powers gets cryogenically frozen, and he says that whenever Doctor Evil reappears to unfreeze him, defrost him. So whenever Doctor Evil reappears, to defrost him so that he can continue fighting Doctor Evil. I mean, it's, if you haven't figured it out, it's a comedy. So anyhow, he gets defrosted in modern times, and modern times, mind you, is in the 90s, 1997 to be exact. And this movie initially started in the 60s, so there's almost a 30-year gap. So now you've got this guy from the 60s who's reawakening in the modern time 1997. And that's another one of those fish out of water things where he's still this guy where he's still goofy looking, and kind of disturbing looking. Almost want to say ugly. Well, I mean, I guess he was kind of ugly. I guess that's the point. Anyway, he does all these gross things now in the modern time, and it's just not working for him. Like, chicks are looking at him like he's kind of weird, and it's just not coming off the way it used to in the 60s. So Austin Powers gets partnered up with Elizabeth Hurley, and let me tell you, I mean, she's so cute in this movie. They put her in all these Bond looking outfits, James Bond looking outfits, and she's just adorable in this movie. And it's funny because Austin is just throwing himself at her, and she's kind of rebuffing him the whole time, like, hey, we're going to keep this professional, and I'm not going to get involved with you. And eventually during the movie, I don't know, she starts falling for his goofiness, and eventually at the end of the movie, they wind up hooking up. But it's just funny watching this guy throwing it like his best game at her, and she's just not going for it. In the meantime, Dr. Evil, he's come back to modern times, and he realizes that he has a son, and his son is played by Seth Green. And the banter between these two, it's so funny. Seth Green, he's grown up without a father, and now that Doctor Evil's back in modern time, they go to father son counseling, and they do all these things trying to bond with each other. Doctor Evil's trying to make him evil, and Seth Green he's just not going for it. It doesn't seem like it's in his character, and just the banter between these two, it's pretty funny. So just like any James Bond movie, you've got the Austin Powers. He's trying to capture Doctor Evil. Doctor Evil sending minions to go get him. So one of my favorite minions that Doctor Evil sends to Austin Powers is at some point he constructs these fembots, and they're played by real actresses, but they're supposed to be these robots that look like women, and they look like they're from the '60s with their beehive hairstyle and their little short mini skirts. And there's I believe there's like three or four of them. So anyway, what they do is they look sexy and they dance around and they're supposed to seduce men. And while you're being seduced by them, machine guns come out of their boobs and then they'll shoot you and kill you. And it's so ridiculous when it happens, but it's hilarious because when they come out on screen, they play that the boots are made for walking, and it's just cool with the rhythm that they come out, and they do their little dance and they start shooting things with their boobs. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, but man, it's funny. Just like the James Bond movie that it's supposed to spoof, Austin eventually captures Dr. Evil, but at the end, Dr. Evil kind of gets away, and Austin gets the girl, and the movie's over. I mean, it's a pretty fun comedy. I remember enjoying it back when I saw it in the movie theater, and it was one of those movies that, I mean, it's hard to describe. There she is again. It's hard to describe the cultural impact that the character of Austin Powers and Dr. Evil had because I mean to this day, I mean here we are almost 30 years later, and check this out. There's almost a 30-year difference between when this movie was released and now. So I mean think about it. It was so wild thinking that somebody from the 60s would be in the 90s, and now 90s to now 2024. Well, actually 2025. I mean, it's almost a 30-year difference now. And I mean, it's just wild to me. I don't think enough has changed from the 90s to now. I mean, sure, music is a little bit different and styles a little bit different, but I don't think it's changed as much as from the 60s to the 90s. But I think maybe technology is probably the biggest change. But other than that, I mean, not much has changed. So anyway, so the cultural impact of these characters, I mean, even to this day, 30 years later, like I was saying, they still have costumes. When people say, yeah, baby, yeah, groovy, baby, yeah, and all that stuff, I mean, people still know that. And I don't know whether they think it's funny or not if they still do it. But I'll tell you what, during a Halloween, I'm sure you've seen an Austin Powers costume somewhere at some party. So, Austin Powers, after this review, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was charming. I thought it was funny. I still laughed when I was supposed to. You know which kind of comedies I like? I really like Airplane, something I reviewed earlier. Go check that video out. But I don't think it's up to the Airplane level, but I do think it's a pretty solid comedy and as a James Bond spoof. So if I'm going to give it a rating, I think I'll give it a 3 out of 4 wheelchairs. And so for our last movie of this episode, it's going to be Austin Powers and Goldmember. Now, I'm fully aware that this is the third movie in this series and not the second one, because that was The Spy Who Shagged Me. And I remember watching Spy Who Shagged Me, and honestly, I didn't like it. I didn't buy it as a DVD. I remember seeing it in the movie theater. I didn't feel the need to go out and purchase it like I did the first movie. And so I don't have it here to review. So I'm moving on to Goldmember. This movie, of course, you have the returning characters of Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, both played by Mike Myers. And then also your returning characters of Seth Green as Dr. Evil's son. But you have a new girl character or love interest, which is played by Beyonce. Also, Mike Myers, he plays a third character. Well, actually, he plays multiple characters in the movie. But the second antagonist on top of Dr. Evil is another guy called Goldmember. This movie had a genius casting in Michael Caine. He actually plays Austin Powers' dad, Nigel Powers. And it was perfect casting. In the second movie, they introduced a character called Mini-Me, played by Vern Troyer, and he's also in this movie. So I don't remember how he came about. I think he was a genetic clone or something, but he's definitely in this movie too, and he's pretty funny in this movie. Goldmember being the third movie in the franchise, and it's still just a James Bond spoof. it's the same thing. You have Austin Powers going after Doctor Evil. There's another guy with in Goldmember. The two bad guys team up against him. And the one thing about this movie is it's actually the third in the franchise and I guess a trilogy of Austin Powers movies. And you can tell that this is a almost like the end of the Austin Powers movies because he just went out with a bang. There's several celebrity cameos in it. You've got Tom Cruise and Gwyneth Paltrow and Danny DeVito, Steven Spielberg. They're all kind of littered throughout the movie, and they actually do a parody within the parody where they actually have Tom Cruise playing Austin Powers in the movie right in the beginning. It's actually pretty funny seeing the reveal that he's Tom Cruise, but instead of being goofy with the yeah baby yeah, Tom Cruise does it like real smooth, like yeah baby yeah, and it's just different, and it was pretty funny. But you can tell that they were kind of just throwing everything at this movie because it seemed like it's the end of this trilogy. Austin's love interest and partner in this movie, played by Beyonce, is Foxy Cleopatra, and she tells you that every time she's on screen. I'm Foxy Cleopatra. I mean, she looks great. I think it's maybe her first or second movie that she did, and I know she's not necessarily an actress, but I think for the role that she was given, I mean, I thought she did pretty good, especially doing a comedy. From what I understand, doing a comedy is really hard for actors and actresses, and I think her comedic timing was pretty good. I thought she was pretty funny. She looked great in the James Bond outfits that they put her in. I mean, she looked great. She's pretty, and I enjoyed her character. There are several funny scenes in this movie, and one of them in particular, well, actually, there's several scenes with Fred Savage. If you don't know Fred Savage, he's actually from the Wonder Years. And Fred Savage, he actually he's on the good guys team, but he's playing a mole, and he's on the bad guys' spine. And one of the funny things about him is, even though he's considered a mole, he actually has a mole, a physical mole on his face. And the other characters, they when they see him, it's almost like time stops, and they get fixated on this mole, and I mean, they just make fun of this poor guy who's just he's trying to do something right, he's trying to fight for the good guys, but everybody, not only the bad guys but the good guys, they all make fun of his mole every time he comes on screen, and I mean, it's sad, but it's fucking hilarious. There's another really funny scene when Austin is fighting Mini Me, and actually Mini Me has defected from Doctor Evil, and he's trying to be a good guy, but Austin Powers isn't aware of it. So when he finds Mini Me like hiding in his apartment or something, they get into this crazy fist fight, and it's so funny because obviously Mini Me, when he's throwing him around, it's a doll or like a prosthetic, and he's just slamming him around this room or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous the damage that Austin's doing to Mini Me, or they're doing back and forth to each other. But just the way he almost throws him like a football across the room, and it's just the physical comedy is just so funny to me. I love that one scene in particular. So since I watched this movie in the movie theater and I enjoyed it way more than the second one, I actually bought this one on DVD. So when I reviewed it this last time, it still held up. I don't think it's as funny as the first one, but this one's still pretty good. I had a good time watching it. There were parts that I completely forgot, like for example the Fred Savage character with the moly moly stuff. I'd forgotten about that, and it caught me off guard, and I was just cracking up. And I mean, what can I say? I liked it. So if I had to compare it between the two, I mean, I think this third one, they like I said, they're throwing everything at you in this one, and you kind of feel it. And but a lot of the comedy, I mean, it still hit for me. So between the two, I think they're pretty equal. And I don't know. I think I have to give it a 3 out of 4 wheelchairs. So here's a part of the video where I have the movies battle it out to see which ones I like from least to best. Now it's really the thing about it is we already have a 4-star movie, and obviously of these 4 movies, it's going to be Apocalypto. I mean, it's so compelling. It's so involving. It just gets you into that culture. Just whoops. It just gets you into that culture, and you okay? I don't know about your movie, but I'm okay. It gets you so involved in their culture, and you feel the struggles, and I mean, it's so visceral, that movie, that I mean, it just has to be number one. So so of these movies, Apocalypto is definitely my number one. So let's see what kind of order I'm going to put these other, because I mean, I gave them all threes. Looking at the movies and how much I enjoyed them now, um, I think I think I would have to choose. Uh, Give me a second here. I know the anticipation. I would have to choose. I think the first Austin Powers. I thought um, it just took me back to a time where Austin Powers and Doctor Evil, um, they were brand new, and I'd never seen them before, and I just found all their silly humor. I mean, when it comes to humor, I love the silly slapstick stuff, and this was full of it. And Elizabeth Hurley was great in it. I just enjoyed that movie more than these other two. So really, let's see which one's going to be at the bottom. Ah, oh, eek. All right, so for the last two, let's see which one's going to be on the bottom. I think for number three, I'm going to choose As Good as It Gets. I mean, look, Jack Nicholson. Say what you will about the guy. He's put in some stellar performances throughout his career, and really, this is no different. Although I don't know Jack Nicholson at all, I bet you anything, this one is more or less what he's like in real life. But what do I know? And the only thing I don't really like about the movie is, I mean, there's such an age difference between Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson that I found it a little bit hard to find them romantically involved, which is why, for me, I think they just wind up being good friends. But either way, the acting was really good. There's really good humor. There's a really good human message in this movie. So that's why I picked this number three. And for my last movie, and really, I enjoyed this one too. It's not really a loser by any means, but Goldmember would be my number four. I know I said I was going to rate him from least to best, but I mean, it was obvious which one was going to be number one. It was harder for me to figure out which one was going to be the least, which really, I mean, it was still a good movie. I liked it. It was fun. So that's it, everyone. I've gone through all the A DVDs that I have. So if I had to pick one of all my favorite A's, which would have been, I think it was Airplane, Aliens, American Psycho, and now with Apocalypto, I think of all of those movies, my favorite would be Aliens. However, I thought that I had one movie in particular that starts with an A that would have 100% killed all these movies. And apparently, when I was looking through my DVD collection, it was suspiciously missing. And I don't know where it is. Maybe I let somebody borrow it. Maybe it's somewhere misplaced. Maybe I'll find it somewhere else while I'm going through this collection. But definitely, American Werewolf in London, that would 100% be my number one, with a very close second of Aliens. But since I don't have it and I didn't review it, Aliens is going to be my top of my season A. That's it. That's the end of this episode. Just remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification for new episodes. And just remember that all these movies that I review, or at least a good portion of them, uh, I'm giving them away for free. Send me a message. I'll send it to you for the low, low price of just like and subscribe. Come on, man. So just remember that my name is Trini. I am the Batquad, and I am end of watch.